"Fight!" Master Carl yelled. Jack wasted no time as he dashed forward as swiftly as he could before the seven could react, making a beeline for Jarl, the huge leader of the Red Legion aspirants from his class. The yellow-scaled brute had barely any time to react, as Jack jumped up high in the low gravity, aiming perfectly as the sharp bone of his flying knee cracked against the Zarek's snout with a sickening crunch, dropping the beast out cold in a single strike. Still taking advantage of the element of surprise, Jack quickly found his footing and spun around with a heavy punch to another Zarek's face. He was able to get a meaty claw up to block some of the force, but the impact sent the reptile stumbling back, wobbly on his feet. He wasn't knocked out, but he would have to take time to recover. Nika wasn't far behind Jack with her own game plan, keeping low and dashing forward on all fours, baiting her insectoid opponent into a low guard. She knew that if the Anisite got the opportunity to attack with its sharp pincers and barbed forelegs, it could cause some major damage. So she wasn't going to give it the chance. Using her powerful legs and tail, she jumped up high over the low swipe, before using her forward momentum to deliver a devastating bicycle kick, hammering her powerful feet repeatedly into the Anisite's skull, knocking it out before it hit the ground. Looking back up, Nika could see one of the Zarek staggered back by Jack, with another pushing past him for an attack. Nika didn't hesitate, rushing forward and swiftly wrapping her tail around the creature's arm before it had a chance to take a swipe at Jack with its king claw. Quickly, she pulled herself closer to the Zarek, using her momentum to kick low at his knee, buckling it. Jack, who had noticed the incoming attack but couldn't do much about it, quickly spun round to elbow the creature in the face, knocking it to the ground, before being finished off by Nika's kick between the eyes as she rushed to her next opponent. Jack didn't have time to think, as he quickly braced for a heavy swipe to his side that completely knocked the wind out of him. He cursed as he took in his new assailant, a hulking, aquatic-looking beast with an exoskeleton of hard, rough coral, advancing cautiously towards him. Thick, pale arm plates from multiple limbs, forming a shield in front of him, while the creature delivered hammer-like blows from its back tentacles, Jack maintaining his footwork to dodge. He knew he couldn't stall for too long. Aside from this guy, there were three other opponents. One was the Zarek he'd knocked back, who was still shaking it off. He could see Nika was facing off against what looked like one of Alora's race. From what he could see, the guy was good. Quick on his feet and able to get some good offense on Nika, who for her part kept up an effective defense, deflecting the momentum of the guy's attacks and counter-attacking on her own. But the numbers were still against them, and they were split up. And there was Svartal. The serpent hadn't entered the fight yet, which Jack felt strange. From what he had seen about him so far, Jack knew the snake was a coward who would take every advantage of every opportunity. So why hadn't he attacked him yet? As he dodged a tentacle lunge from the coral monster, Jack's heart dropped, as he saw Svartal make motions with his hands, multicolored sparks spraying out, as his form shimmered and warped. The bastard was buffing himself with magic. Nika dodged back, the punch grazing the side of her head. The Eladra was good, and had laid some hits on her, but she had landed some hits on him as well. Currently they were evenly matched, but she knew that the numbers game would soon turn against them. She looked to the side to see Jack fighting the hulking Plouf, desperate to bring the other down, as the other Zarek finally recovered, and lumbered up to attack her. "Wait!" called the Eladra to the Zarek, who ignored him, as in a rage he made a wild swipe at Nika. "Give them a chance to surrender." "Not gonna happen!" Nika growled, as she used her tail around to slide underneath the Zarek's legs, and jumped up to try and put him in a chokehold, the Eladra looking disgusted with himself as he rushed in to help. "Nika!" Jack yelled, as she pushed forward in frustration against the guy blocking him, hammering blows onto the armoured arms in his way as tentacles smashed into him as well. Thinking quickly in desperation, Jack quickly grabbed one of the lunging limbs and pulled with all his might, hoisting the creature towards and over him in a judo throw, slamming it into the ground with a hard thump. Getting up quickly, he rushed towards Nika, who was frantically fending off her two attackers before he dropped to the ground on pure instinct as a jet of green mist shot over his head. As he quickly got to his feet, he was shot back by something hard. "Still want to act tough now?" came the sneering voice of Svartal, ×7. He and what looked like 6 others looked bleary and distorted, likely a combination of magical effects as he slithered over to Jack quicker than should have been possible. Jack raised his arms in defense, not knowing what was going to happen, as the Svartals lashed out with their forked tongues. Jack felt pain as he pulled back, seeing 3 large cuts on his arm. "I have heard of death by 100 cuts, human," the snake sneered, as they slithered quickly around Jack in a circle, lashing out with more attacks that gave him more cuts along his arms. "How many could a death roller take?" Jack snarled through the pain as he maintained a defensive stance, taking more cuts along his arms and legs. He saw Nika try to fend off her two attackers, desperately pulling off a backflip, uppercutting the reptile, before taking a kick from the other guy. If Jack didn't do something, they were dead. Timing his movement just right, he jumped forward as quickly as he could. The Svartal he tried to clothesline dissipated in black smoke, as Jack quickly pivoted into a wheel kick, the mirror image also dissipating. "Nice try, human," the remaining 5 Svartals snarled, as they circled around him once more. "Now you die." The 5 snakes rushed forward at Jack, who closed his eyes. The images and sounds messed with his sight and hearing, so he quickly concentrated. Where would the real attack come from? The feeling of a rush of air behind him confirmed his guess, as Jack quickly spun around just in time to face his attacker, reaching his hand up to grip Svartal's tongue tight before he could lash at his eyes. "How?" the snake tried to mouth, before Jack yanked forward, putting Svartal into a kick aimed at where he thought the penile area was located. "Of course you'd attack me from behind," Jack snarled. "Pussy." The kick didn't have the effect Jack wanted, which Svartal took advantage of as he grabbed Jack's arm and sunk his fangs in deep. Jack growled as Svartal's eyes widened in surprise that Jack was still standing, the snake quickly becoming dazed as Jack headbutted him. "You motherfucker!" Jack yelled, in between punches, forcing Svartal to release the bite, the telltale clear venom dripping down from the serpent's fangs. He released his grip on the tongue as well. His hand hurt like hell, but Svartal fell back to the ground, dazed. As he heard Nika try desperately to fend off her 2 attackers, Jack knew he had already taken too much time. As Svartal tried to clamber to his feet, Jack stopped him by grabbing his tail, dragging him along the ground as he charged at the last Zarek, clobbering him over the head with the cursing Svartal, whacking one motherfucker with another motherfucker. The Zarek collapsed to the ground, releasing Nika, who had been fighting the hold. Jack slammed Svartal into the brute again for good measure, knocking the hulking beast out. The serpent, for his part, was still sprouting expletives and threats, so Jack shut him up by smacking him on the ground a few times to improve his manners. Puny god, Jack thought in his mind, though Hulk and Loki this was certainly not. He moved to punch Svartal in the face to confirm the KO, as the last guy tackled him from the side, sending Jack rolling back. He quickly sprung to his feet to see where his attacker was, but relaxed a little when he saw the last guy was backing off towards the aquatic creature Jack had thrown to the ground, checking to see if the hulking beast was alright. Jack did the same, moving to Nika as she struggled to get to her feet. "How are you holding up?" She grinned as she took Jack's hand and hopped upright, trying to make an effort to look tough and unfazed as she did. "Oh, that? Had them right where I wanted them." Jack rolled his eyes as he looked at the last 2. The aquatic creature was still on the ground clutching at something, while the elven-looking boy stood opposite in a relaxed stance, looking at the 2 of them. "I don't suppose you want to call this one a tie?" the boy cheekily called to Jack and Nika. Jack just stood there, taking a second to process it before he just snorted in amusement. "Little late for that, Val," Nika called out in a friendly tone. "Though since you gave me the option of surrender, it's only fair we do the same to you, no?" She looked up at Jack to see if he agreed. As the adrenaline started to wind down, the realization of what just happened caused him to just give a curt nod, barely registering what Nika had just said as... "I did not give you permission to stop!" Master Cole yelled at the group. 7 of the best Red Legion aspirants in this group failed against these 2. Shameful. I should come over there and... "Master Carl?" Both the students and Carl looked around towards the speaker, who looked to be a teacher. He seemed to be the same species as Krill, a hawk-like avian with spectacles, with brown feathers that were turning grey, and dressed in finery with a broadsword of all things strapped to his hip. Behind him were a few students he didn't recognise, and one that he did, and looked to be hiding at the back. Nia. Did she do something? Carl seemed to tense up upon seeing the other teacher, which looked strange to Jack. The man didn't look intimidating at all. "Mr. Sparrow, I'm... teaching," Carl growled. "What is it?" "Well," Mr. Sparrow smiled, as he spoke in his upper-class accent, clearly not intimidated in the slightest by Master Carl. "It appears a demon of some kind, probably a Moringu, has been summoned on the 37th floor, and has proven rather difficult for the defense systems to take down. The headmaster has requested that I take it down with your assistance, unless you feel this is beyond the capabilities of the Red Legion's finest." Carl narrowed his eyes at that, but did nothing. "Very well," he growled, before turning to the group. "Pair up and practice blocks and strikes until I get back, or until everyone is called for laps. Don't even think of slacking off." As Carl rounded up a few other PE teachers, Jack just stood there thinking to himself, before he felt an arm wrap around him. "Hey," Nika spoke quietly, as the others paired up, giving the 2 of them a wide berth. You okay? That was bloody brutal, even for Cole's usual standards. Jack wasn't okay. How could he be after that? Cole had just ordered 7 of his fellow classmates to try and kill both him and Nika, and he himself had come close to losing control. Had Val not knocked him off with Spartal? I'm all good, Jack found himself saying with forced confidence. You? I'll manage, Nika replied with a sigh of relief. Like I said, I had them right where I wanted them. We might want to check with Alora when we can, though. You're pretty badly cut up. Jack looked down at his arms. The wounds Spartal had left on him were many, stung him quite badly, and it took all of his willpower not to visibly cringe at the downright ugly wound in his hand from where he had grabbed the razor-sharp tongue. His brothers had often told him that, even if you come on top in the knife fight, you were going to get cut. Strange as the context was, it still applied here. He couldn't let the discomfort show. Humans were meant to be tough, and men were meant to be strong. As Nika and Jack paired up with the others while the wounded were seen to by the patrolling medical droids, the Kizan felt like crap. She knew she shouldn't. The pair of them fought well, had overcome the odds, and looked like total badasses doing so. She had honestly expected to be either killed or beaten badly alongside the human, and despite the bravado, that had nearly happened to the both of them. And yet the human just shook it off like it was nothing. Nika was sad in a way. She couldn't admit her vulnerability from their shared experience if Jack didn't feel the same way. What do you think of her? Jack, she began softly, as they half-heartedly practiced, keeping up appearances but happy to wind down after the fight. Are you sure you're right? Jack's gaze became distant for a while, as he struggled to form a reply. Lapse! Yelled one of the PE teachers, the cry being mimicked by the others. Nika cursed at the timing of that. Lapse? Jack asked, more than happy to change the subject. Yup, Nika sighed. Run the perimeter of the sports hall until the teachers get bored or the lunch bell goes off. At least we can find the others and let Laura heal us up. Sounds like a plan, Jack replied, once again looking confident, as the pair of them started jogging. He did what? Alora exclaimed angrily. I'll report him to the school board. I'll have him disbarred. Alora, chill, Nika replied in a soothing tone. We're fine now. Jack and Nika were jogging at a relatively steady pace to match Alora's, as she immediately started to work her healing magics on seeing the state of the pair of them, listening to their account of what happened. The healing effect still felt strange to Jack. He had experienced it before when the Church of Astara saved him after he arrived, but that didn't make it feel any less weird. It was like his wounds were dunked in some kind of warm gel, then itched like hell immediately after. He decided to let Nika do the talking, as he scratched at his arms in a futile attempt to stop the feeling. That doesn't mean that gives him the right to have students officially try to kill each other, Alora replied, in a very unsure manner. He's already under investigation for the injury and abuse of several students. Wait, you mean the teachers can't lawfully tell us to fight to the death? That's so progressive, Jack exclaimed. Alora rolled her eyes at Jack's sarcasm. One of the major rules the founding gods decreed was to ensure the duty of care all teachers have towards students. There's been cases of Master Carl pushing students past their limits, but he's gone too far this time. As the two girls continued back and forth, Jack decided to slow down a little to allow his other two friends to catch up to him. Sephi was sweating at a steady pace, but Cheer was visibly suffering, the Ilithi hating the physical exercise as she trundled behind. Hey Jack, what's this about you and Nika being total badasses? Sephi grinned at him. Jack sighed. Their group had been at the edge of the sports hall, so not everyone saw what happened, but by the way many of his fellow students were staring at him in a mix of awe, fear and curiosity, Jack guessed that the story had spread quickly. The teacher tried to make us fight against some other students to the death, and according to Alora that's bad, replied Jack, not wanting to dwell on it, giving the heavily condensed version. Both Sephi and Cheer's eyes wondered at that. Damn, Sephi replied, the most serious Jack had ever seen her. Cheer gently tugged on Jack's arm to get his attention, rubbing her fingers along the part of his arm where Spartal had bit him with a questioning look. Yeah, that's where Spartal, the snake guy, bit me. Hurt like hell, but not as much as that sharp tongue of his did. We're venom, Sephi replied incredulously. How are you even alive? Sleeve ash venom is a damn killer, everyone knows that. Huh. Must have missed the memo, Jack replied with false bravado. You two fought very well regardless, a third voice called out, as Jack turned round and tensed up as he saw one of the guys they had fought. It was Val, the grey elven guy that had been the only guy among the 7 still standing by the end. Yeah? Jack asked, wary of the other boy. The Eladra casually waved his hand at that. Fight's over. Cull isn't here and I've got nothing against you guys whatsoever. I knew Nika was good, but you were something else. I simply wanted to pay my respects. It was a good fight. Jack started. He had no idea how to respond to that. Sure? Val smiled at that. Some of the others and I are on a few sports teams and we need some more people. Maybe you'll be interested in joining our deathball team. What? Jack replied, slightly irritated. So Sparta and the Lizard Squad can ambush me when I have my back turned? Val blanched at that. Those 4 from your form class you were fighting, they're assholes we don't play with. Just because we're Red Legion aspirants doesn't make us friends. Kizarif and Pluderoo are, though. He pointed to the insectoid and the aquatic, who were lumbering along. Oh, Jack replied, feeling a little bad about his initial hostility. Sure, I guess. I don't know much about the rules, though. Not to worry, Val replied with a pleased look, as he jogged ahead. I'll shoot you my comlink code when we get back to the lockers. Jack had to think about that. It could be an ambush, or it could be a chance to make some new friends. Stranger things had happened, but Jack didn't have long to think. Upon seeing that Chio was struggling, Sephi called out to her, Hey, teachers aren't looking. Looking relieved, Chio began to levitate for several moments, before a barking voice called out, Miss Darcy, did I say you could use your powers? Drop down and give me 20. Staring daggers at Sephi, Chio laid down into a push-up position and started to weakly attempt the exercise. Heh, that's what she gets for getting me into tension, Sephi grinned at Jack. Could you believe she actually left homework with fake answers in the house that anyone could copy? No way, Jack replied, pretending he didn't know, trying his best to keep a straight face. Suddenly, Sephi yelped and jumped up into the air, involuntarily activating her wings on reflex. Use of wings is forbidden, another PE teacher yelled, as the Skritter took a few awkward steps forward, trying to adjust what seemed to be a wedgie. Drop down and give me 20. As Jack continued jogging, he looked back to see Chio, in the middle of her push-ups, with a strangely satisfied smile. Hey, you're Jack, right? Jack sighed. He barely had any time on returning to the change rooms before he had been bombarded with questions. Several had already asked about what his relationship with Allura was, and upon learning that they were just friends, he was hit with a broadside of yet more questions about her favourite colour, her eating habits, and where she would be that evening. Jack got disturbed rather quickly by this, but fortunately when he told him that the next person who asked would get badmouthed to Allura by him, the questions ceased. Immediately followed by questions about his fight. There were enough witnesses, of course, but since the stories became more and more exaggerated with each telling, the other boys were very keen to confirm a few things. No, he didn't use any performance-enhancing drugs. No, he didn't buff himself with magic, that would be Spartal. And most definitely no, he didn't immediately after have a steamy make-out session with Nika over the broken bodies of their opponents. Though, that was not an unpleasant thought. Shit. Not the line of thought to entertain when he was changing clothes around a bunch of other guys. He was about to turn to the speaker to advise him to leave, when he recognized the avian. Creel was looking even more nervous than when he had tried to call out Master Carl for setting up such a dishonorable fight. Beside him was the rad-like being from his home class, who also looked a bit fidgety. Oh, hey. You're Creel, right? What's up? Creel shuddered at that and stuttered slightly, before finding his voice. I want to apologize for my cowardice earlier. I should have fought alongside you, and I brought dishonor upon my clan. I beg for your forgiveness, he finished, ending with a stiff lower bow. Jack was a little confused for a moment, before hurriedly reassuring the guy. No, don't be sorry about that. I appreciate you speaking up about it. Like you said, it was an unfair fight, and Carl was being a dick. If anything, you were brave for saying something. I mean, how many scars was that guy even wearing? As Krill gave a sigh of relief, the rat dude spoke up. That was an amazing fight. You're definitely one of the best fighters in our year. Maybe you could be a good match for... All the boys that heard immediately snapped round with looks of glee on their faces, and whispered in excitement. They obviously knew where the rat folk was going with this. Upon seeing Jack's confused face, the rat spoke up for everyone to hear. Okay, so Jack's new to our class, so he doesn't know, but there's a really good fighter in our year that's beaten most of the other good combatants here. Don't remind me, Val called out from the side to a chatter of laughter from the crowd. Renner kicked my ass. Jack gave a pained smile at that. Sure, he could fight, but he didn't look for conflict against those that didn't deserve it. Maybe some other time, Jack replied diplomatically, to a few playful groans from the guys, as the bell rang to hurry them up. Lunchtime.